today we are going to be talking about our financial well-being. So Darius, let's have a general conversation of why we decided to talk about that today.
Well, when we talked about our financial vision board last month, we had the 30,000 square foot view or 30,000 feet view, which is the big picture of what we want to accomplish. But we have to come back to reality at some point and understand where we are and how we get to where we're trying to go. So the whole point of us having this financial wellness check is for us to just be real with ourselves once again and understand where we are so that we can take the next step. That's the best step for us.
The next step is the best step. Alrighty. So again, this is February, the month of February. Congratulations. We made it 2 months into 2024. And in today's webinar today, we want to talk about your financial wellness check. Because like Darius just said, last month we hit you with a lot of information, and we want to continue to kind of like chip away at all the information that we're sharing with you so that you can actually take action steps today to move forward. So today we are all just going to be talking about what is your what does your path to prosperity look like? And we hope to give you those answers today so that you can actually take action and move forward.
Right, because it's important for us to have 2 points on the journey. In the GPS, you have the destination, and then you have to have where you are right now.
Yeah.
In order for us to get the right directions to where we need to go. So today is where we are right now so that we can connect those dots.
Absolutely. All right. So financial wellness, folks, let's all get on the same page. All right. Let's understand the same definition. What is financial wellness?
Right. So financial wellness is a sandwich between peace of mind, which includes balancing our income and expenses, and then staying out of debt and saving for the future and understanding our emotions. So sandwiched between the actual financial piece is a peace of mind and managing our emotions, which is a big thing that I think a lot of us should take into consideration, because it's not all about the money. Even no matter how hard we try to make it all about money, it's about the baggage that we brought into it from our childhood. It's about the trauma that we've had in our childhood, the negative energy that we have towards rich people or people that get success a certain way, which we don't even know anything about. So it's all those things that come together to create our financial wellness, our mindset and our emotions that we put behind it.
And what we were talking about last month too was how many of us go to the doctor and we get regular checkups, or we are always thinking about our weight or the things that we want to do, but we never go into the financial wellness checkup and try to figure out what are the things that we need to do so that we could have a good physical this year. So if y'all want to have a good financial physical this year, then say, I want to have a good financial physical in the chat. Let us know. My physical is going to be A-okay, right? Let us know in the chat if that's what you want.
Which is why you guys are here. This is why you're here, because you want to set the intention for your finances.
Absolutely. And going back again to the whole financial wellness, like if you look at the definition according to Google, right, we're thinking about the ability to live within your means and manage your money in a way that gives you a peace of mind. Now, a lot of times when people hear live within your means, you could misunderstand that for meaning skimping. Right. And so we want to make sure that we're all on the same page, and we're not talking about skimping. We're talking about being strategic, giving every dollar a job. Okay. So when we want to think about those things, it's about, okay, if I'm always thinking about holding back or skimping, we consider that what many of you may or may not know is called a scarcity mindset, always thinking that there's never enough. Right. So if you want to have abundance, if you want to do some of the things that we have been talking about, getting policies, getting trusts, getting whatever it is for your financial wellness, you have to start changing your mindset and learning new things about financial literacy that are going to take you into different realms of your financial health so that you can like unlock different doors and go to different levels.
Right. Because there's one thing that there's enough of, and that is money. There's enough money to go around for everybody because they're printing money. Money can be created out of thin air. Matter of fact, there's only 5% of hard money in circulation right now. The rest of it is digital currency. So with that, there's plenty of money. It's just maybe there's some other dots that we need to connect in order to get those things, or the finances, where they need to be inside of our lives.
I love it. Thank you all for the chat. for your input. We really appreciate that because we are all on the same page. So thank you. We are all here for the same webinar. I'm
Right.
glad we're on the same page. Now, as we always talk about with Darius and I, our journey, right? So this webinar is just labor of love of the things that we've kind of figured out along the way. So with our financial goal, it was always about reducing stress, reducing uncertainty, improving financial stability, and promoting financial literacy and creating sound or responsible financial behaviors. Now, this can ebb and flow from month to month,
Now this
right?
and this is a simple sentence, which there's a lot that goes into this.
Yeah.
There's a lot that goes into the things that Carmen just said about financial stress and improving financial stability and financial literacy, because these are things that we aren't taught in school. So this is why we want to address it now, because in our journey through the relationships and people that we've come across, we've learned these things from these individuals.
Yeah. And in today's webinar, we want to make it basic. We want to make it simple and tangible because we know that if you just take what we talk about today, you are going to be able to move forward tomorrow with simple action steps so that you can start checking the boxes to bring more peace of mind to your life. So again, going back to our goal, the whole premise at the end of the day is peace of mind. That's what we want. We want to wake up every day and go, we don't have to worry about emergencies happening because we planned for it. We don't have to worry about really much of anything because we've planned for it. So that's what we want to get everyone in our realm to be able to experience, because when you can experience it, it is a game changer, folks.
Right, because it's also different for every single person.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why we can't say that a dollar amount is going to make you happy or a dollar amount is going to be what you need to be successful, because everyone's situation is different.
Yeah, because we know many people who have millions of dollars and they aren't managing their money, right? So with those individuals, they are just as stressed as somebody who might make $80,000 a year
Right.
and not managing their money. So going into the comments real quick, one person says what peace of mind is being debt free, knowing that every dollar is doing, not having to worry about a job. Peace of mind is knowing that my funds are secure and becoming my own bank. Woo woo, that's what we're talking about. Freedom to live the life that I want, not living check to check. So we're on the same page, folks. Thank you again for all of this information, because sometimes we look at ourselves and we're like, are we crazy? Like this money thing.
Sometimes.
Depends on the day. Excuse me. But the whole point is like, why do we continue to have this conversation about money when we feel like other people around us aren't necessarily taking their money as seriously? So that's why we need our family to keep us in check, right? So what I want to do right now is I want you all to look at all of these pictures on the screen and be honest with yourselves. You don't have to answer. We won't tell anybody. What picture can you identify with as it relates to your finances?
Right, because remember, we talked about the emotions
Oops.
that we have
Going back.
as it relates to money.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about the peace of mind as it relates to money.
Mm-hmm.
Which one of these do you feel like you can identify with the most? And if that's the case, take a look at it and think about how you're feeling in that moment. Think about how much control you feel like you have in that moment.
I'm laughing because this could change on a daily basis.
Yeah.
So one thing that we see is someone is angry. We see avoidance. We know avoidance can happen. Absolutely.
I'm not going to check my account. I'm scared to look at it. I'm
I
scared to
ain't
look
dealing
at
with
it.
it. Not today.
I'm not opening QuickBooks today.
Not today. We have a partner that's enjoying the situation. We have a partner that's not enjoying the situation. And we have somebody who is thrilled to death. So, which one are you? And again, you don't have to answer this. This is just your financial checkup, folks. Okay. Because we know what ours can be. So, let's talk about what yours can be as well.
Right.
Now, one thing that was a game changer for Darius and I through our financial wellness was reading The Secrets of the Millionaire Mind by T. Harv Eker. And one of his really famous quotes in there was, if you change the fruits, you will change the roots. So for my visual people,
If you want to change the fruits, you will first have to change the roots.
thank you. Darius is an amazing reader. Thank you for coming through for me on that faith. So the idea is, for my visual family out there, you think of a tree, a fruit tree. You want your fruit tree to bear the sweetest, ripest, most amazing fruit that's possible. But that's not going to happen if the root structure is vulnerable. Okay.
It's all about what you don't see, which
Mm-hmm.
is important. We don't, when we see people that we think are in a good financial space, we don't see everything that's going on behind the scenes of how they got there, if they're actually even wealthy.
Mm-hmm.
We don't see everything that went into it. We don't see the roots.
Yeah,
We don't see the baggage.
we don't see that journey. We
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 don't see the
see
journey.
we
Yeah.
think the result is, which could potentially be on Instagram, right? So the idea is if you want to change the visible, those fruits, you have to change the invisible. So that's the other point that we want to put into your mind today is thinking about this financial checkup. Okay, which picture did I identify with? Now going back to, okay, what kind of fruits am I bearing based off of the emotional state that I'm currently in? Because a lot of things that we don't necessarily address with our finances is where are we mentally? Because that will significantly affect what your pockets look like.
Right. This is stuff you don't see.
Mm-hmm. All the invisible. Now, recapping to last month's webinar. Are you guys ready? We were talking about how to create a financial vision board. And what we did was we hit you with this. Woo!
So
Okay.
so this is what we're trying to accomplish. So we right now we're talking about the foundation that we need to establish ourselves a good set footing so that we can get to the family office. And the family office is basically having only one point of contact for all of our wealth planning, wealth management, tax planning, corporate structures, philanthropy, and family governance.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, what we're all doing is we're doing this on an individual basis. We have certain people that we talk to, we have certain things that we do, and we have all these moving parts. What we're trying to do on our end, Carmen and Darius, for our situation is we want to have one point of contact.
Mm-hmm. And that is this family office or the business that we're creating around our financial circumstances.
Mhm.
Now, we recognize this is a lot on the screen. And like I said, we talked about this in the month of January. But what I want to recognize is we are all here, I would assume, for the same common goal is that you found us because life insurance may have come into your realm. And so when you see on this screen, we want to zoom out again, right? Darius said, let's look at this from a 30,000-foot level of just realizing that life insurance is just one piece of this amazing puzzle. There are so many other things that go into this process, which is why, again, it's important for us to do this financial wellness check to see what are all of the other moving parts that we need in this process in order for things to make it work?
Mhm.
And yours may not look like this, folks, right? Like Darius just said, this is what we're striving to do, but we figured that we might as well show you because you may take a few points out of this and want to apply it to your life. So that's why it's so important that we continue to share and be as transparent as possible so that you can see what it is that we're trying to do.
Right. So if we want to break this thing down to departments, this looks a whole lot better than it did the previous screen. So our goal is to transfer wealth across generations because one thing that we can't take with us is our money. So the best thing for us to do is to establish something here for our our next generation.
Mm-hmm.
So the way we do that is by each one of these departments.
Yes.
Now, we see tax planning, family governance, wealth planning, but what makes it simple for us is for us to just make it more our style. Make it,
Remix.
yeah, make it more a reflection of how we think versus just things on the screen.
Mm-hmm. And what we also talked about too, with which is important for you all to understand, is like a lot of these words and phrases can be overwhelming, and it doesn't have to be. So when we think about tax planning, again, that's just trying to figure out how to reduce the amount of money that we're paying towards taxes. Family governance, what that essentially means is who's going to replace us? What is the hierarchy level for understanding how this whole family business is going to work? Because everyone needs to have a job. Just this, the same way that we have our money working for us, we have to have the family in place working the process to make sure that if something were to happen to us, everything's going to continue to move forward. And we can go on and on. If you want to check out the replay, then we'll make sure to put the replay in the chat so that you can make sure that you catch up to speed with everything that we talked about in January.
Right.
Now, what we had to come to the understanding was a reality check.
Because that
Mhm.
family office is for people that have net worths upward of $50 million.
Mm-hmm. And if you ain't got $2 to rub together, it's going to look a little different.
Right.
Right. So we have to manage our expectations. And in understanding this whole process, we had to recognize, like, you know what, Carmen and Darius, from a few years ago, we aren't ready for this just yet. So we had to take a step back and understand, what are we ready for? And what are the steps that we can take today to get to that family office, or to even start having conversations around the family office?
Right.
So moving to that, I'm going to cue Ryan in the background. Ryan, I want you to help us understand what is the verdict from the survey, right? So for everyone thinking about your foundation and what we have in place, these are the 6 questions that we asked you. Okay. So before we even talk about a family office, we have to make sure that our foundation is laid and that concrete is cured. Because if a storm hits, you need to make sure that you have a rock solid foundation.
Right. So you can't build on sand
Mm-mm.
because it won't be able to handle anything that you put on top of it.
Absolutely. Now, the very first question, fam, is, do you have $2,000 saved for emergencies?
A minimum. Everybody's situation is different, but for us, what we want to say is just have a foundation of $2,000 as an emergency.
Mm-hmm. Now, Ryan, let us know in the chat. What is oh, there we go. He's already there. So
72% of the people got their emergency funds.
that's
Perfect.
that's what we're
So
talking
what
about.
that means is if something comes up, you don't have to dip into your investment funds
Mm-hmm.
to take care of an emergency. You don't have to reach into your 401k because that's money that won't be being invested in the stock market if you have borrowed it out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the thing to note too is, you see ABC on the screen, ABC fund. We consider $2,000 for emergencies to be the ABC fund, because you can pay for A, B, or C should it come up. Because the biggest thing, like, let's zoom out. The holistic approach, right, is if you come to us and say, "Hey, Darius and Carmen, I want a whole life insurance policy," and we're going to look at your financials, and if we come to see that you don't have $2,000 in your savings account, we're going to start thinking about, what else can we do to serve you, to make sure that we put you in the right place. Because it's not going to do us any justice, or even do you any justice, for you to have a whole life insurance policy that you may not be able to afford. Why? Because if an emergency comes up, right, you're going to have to dip into whatever account to pay for it, or just your biweekly check to ensure that you can pay for your refrigerator going out, or the washer going out, or your car breaking down. And then what's going to happen? Now your life insurance policy is in jeopardy because maybe you didn't pay for it. And now that $1,000 emergency costs you a $500,000 death benefit that could have passed to your family, should, God forbid, something happen to you.
Right.
So these are the things that we're thinking about when we talk about a holistic financial plan.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, the next one, if you can drive for me, sweetie,
Yep.
is 6 months of needs. So, aside from having an emergency fund, you want to have 6 months to a year of your necessities.
Mm-hmm.
And the way we understand our necessities is to be organized to where we know how much is our mortgage, if we have a mortgage, how much is our car note, how much is our grocery,
Mm-hmm.
how much are the things that we absolutely need on a monthly basis, and can we sustain ourselves for 6 months or longer if we were to lose our main stream of income.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we call this the stash account. So this is money that we have stashed away. And again, it doesn't necessarily matter where this money is. It could be under your mattress. We hope it's probably in like a bank account, or maybe a whole life insurance policy. Go figure. But these are things that you need to be considering.
Right now,
So Ryan hit us with,
we're split. We're about 50-50 on this one. So there's some work that we have to do right now in order to get us to a good foundation for us to start working towards our goals.
mm-hmm.
This is important again because if things are going to come up, and when they do come up, that's when we start getting emotional about the things that happen to us. And when we start getting emotional, we start mismanaging things.
Speak on it.
And when we mismanage, we go further away from what we're trying to accomplish.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Emotions tend to wreak havoc on our finances.
Right. It's the things that we don't see that affects our financial well-being.
Mm-hmm. Now, let's speak on this for a minute, because like we said, we are actually split down the middle, right? So going into this foundation, right? Again, this is just a temperature check. And we did this ourselves. And we can tell you, we failed all across the board, several years ago. And that's when we recognized that we weren't taught this in schools, just the basics, right? We're not even talking about investing, folks. This is the peace of mind that we're trying to get you all to see that you can create for yourself without even having to get into the stock market, first and foremost, right? So when we think about just the basics that we can do for ourselves so that we can create some peace of mind, because many of you, like you already shared with us, what peace of mind means is just freedom.
Right. And it's not a dollar amount, it's a mentality.
Mm-hmm.
It's a mentality that we have to have in order to get the 6 months of saving. It's a mentality that we have to accomplish our financial goals that we have for ourselves.
I'm so glad you said that. Mentality. Mentality is a huge thing because this whole financial trajectory is a mind game, right? Because it's going to be, do I need Starbucks or do I need to fund this stash account? Right? Let's be honest. Because if you were to leave your job, folks, or excuse me, lose your job, right? Which Darius did. When he was laid off, that significantly changed what we had to do. And did we get emotional about it? Yes. And we had to reformat and figure out how are we going to move forward. So if you were to lose your job, right?
Or quit your job to start a business.
Yeah. Is your rent or mortgage going to be paid? How are you going to pay your water bill? Like Darius was saying, how are you going to pay your electricity bill? How are you going to do all these things if you don't have the insurance in place to make this all work? We like to consider the ABC fund and the stash account your insurance. Let's call it your self-funded insurance, right? Because if the refrigerator goes out, we got insurance for that, the ABC account. If
That's all insurance is anyway, is a pool of funds.
That's
And
all
we
it
just
is.
establishing a pool of funds that we don't have to be charged to have access to.
All insurance is CYA. Interpret that how you want, but that's what we're trying to create. All right. So moving on to the next point is, do you have 10 times your income protected in life insurance? Think about that. If you make $100,000, that means you need at least $1 million in death benefit.
Now, 58% of us don't have that 10 times. So we may have some insurance through our job, but we don't have 10 times our income. The importance of having 10 times our income is so that we can teach our beneficiaries how to invest those funds so that we can create that cash flow at a 10% return.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm saying it one more time. If you have $1 million, you can invest it at 10% and make $100,000 in cash flow so that you replace the missing income instead of having that nest egg. Because what happens with nest eggs is every time you spin it, it's gone. It's gone every single time you tap into it. So the reason why we want cash flow and the importance of even having these goals is so that we can create a system, not just for us right now, but for the people that's going to be left behind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And seeing these numbers, it's actually really helpful to see that 58% said no. So obviously 58% of you who are with us today said you do not have 10 times your income. So what does this mean? When we zoom out a little bit more, because many of you may have whole life insurance policies. And from what we understand with whole life insurance policies, you're going to get a certain amount of death benefit. And that may not get you to the 10 times your income. So do you have to have a combination of whole life insurance and maybe some term insurance to cover the gap? Do you have to have multiple policies? Again, you know what this is going to look like for you, but the important thing to know is that we're just having this conversation. So if you said no, now we have the opportunity to reformulate our foundation and figure out how can we get those gaps covered? Because what we need to consider, right, going back to the CYA fund or the insurance for your family fund, is if something were to happen to you, you have to make sure that your family's lifestyle can keep moving forward financially if you are not here.
Right.
And the one thing that we didn't talk about was every participating member of your household, meaning like the adults. Let's just talk about the adults for now, because what we tend to see a lot often is if we have one party that's working and one person that's like maybe a stay-at-home parent. A lot of times we overlook having insurance on that stay-at-home parent, but their value is very much weighted in the ability to make sure that the children are looked after.
Right.
So if something were to happen to this individual, you absolutely need to evaluate how much insurance needs to be on this person because you're going to need childcare should something happen to that
Or a
stay-at-home
house
parent.
manager or whatever.
Hmm. Absolutely. Now, moving on to the next point. This one is juicy. Now, in the quiz, we specifically said, do you have life insurance on your children if you are parents? So in this, I'm gonna say every member of your home, but really we mean children. Now, Carmen and Darius, why in the world would I get life insurance on my babies?
Well, so the reason why you want to get life insurance on your children is because when you file your taxes, your children count as dependents, which gives you the ability to reduce the amount of taxes that you pay. So if those children aren't there, that's more money that you have coming out of your household going towards taxes, which is an expense that we don't even tend to think about.
Hmm. Yeah, and we're split on here as well. So half yes, half no. So now,
And the third don't have children.
now the other thing, folks, like Darius is always checking the balance sheet.
Yes.
Talking about taxes. Excuse me, I'm getting over the flu, so bear with me. So what I want to make sure that we're thinking about the real thing, folks, that nobody's talking about is if you were to lose a child, can you afford burial expenses? We cannot tell you how many times if you we find that parents who lose children are now in a financial hardship because they underestimated how much funeral expenses were going to cost.
And the cheapest insurance that you'll ever get is on a child.
Mm-hmm. And Rodney, great point. Excuse me, guys. Rodney said that my children are all grown.
Do they have insurance on themselves
Mm-hmm.
for your grandchildren?
Yeah, exactly. But again, going back, Rodney, your children are all grown. What happens if, again, something happens to one of those children? Because grown children are more expensive, honestly, to bury than babies.
Yeah.
So let's be honest and make sure that everybody understands how this process is going to work. Because that's the other thing that people don't have the conversation of is where does this expense go? Who's going to pay for it? Right? These are things that we don't have these conversations about. And then all of a sudden, something were to happen, an emergency comes up, and everybody's pointing fingers.
Yeah. Life happens.
Hmm. So, moving on, we know that this isn't fun topics to talk about, but it's real topics to talk about because this is life.
Yeah. And we're talking about our financial wellness. So we have to talk about these things, just like we have to talk about retirement. Are we on a path for a comfortable retirement? If not, what are the things that we need to do to get on that path?
Yeah. So, Ryan, let us know in the comments what everyone is saying. So, do you know how much money you need to retire? And spoiler alert, are you working towards it? It's one thing to know it and another thing to apply it.
Perfect. And how much does inflation come into the conversation? Because if you retired 3 years ago, the income that you retired with 3 years ago may be a little different than the amount of income that you need now because groceries more expensive. Uh, just the cost of goods and services are more expensive because of inflation, the hyperinflation that we've experienced the past couple years.
Absolutely.
So, are we prepared for things of that nature?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a big deal. So, congratulations, fam. It looks like the majority of you, we're split, I would say, are on the path to having a successful foundation. And a lot of us have opportunity.
Mhm.
That's all this is. So, this isn't an opportunity for us to bring you down or discourage you. This is an opportunity to wake us all up and recognize what can we start doing today. So, just looking at the list that's in front of you, for those of you who know that you have some opportunities in place, just start with the $2,000. If you have that, move to the 6 months. Moving on, move to the life insurance, move to your children, move to retirement. These are the absolute steps that we think everyone should have in place and should have locked down to ensure the first step of peace of mind.
Right, right. And again, this is important so that we don't, when we're off creating the dream system for ourselves, the dream financial engine that's going to work without us, when and if things come up, we don't want to stop that train from moving.
Yeah.
We don't want to stop that engine. We don't want to stop that system
Mm-hmm.
because the best thing for money to do is to make more of it.
Absolutely. And I love what Chris says in the chat talking about inflation with what you were saying. He's moving overseas. So there's nothing like that geographic arbitrage because your money goes so much further. Now, moving on to everything that we were talking about as far as this foundation is concerned. If you are lost, if you're stuck in the mud, or if you're trying to figure out how to move forward, we're here to help. Hi, I'm Carmen. He's Darius. And our whole team behind us can make sure that every single aspect of your financial well being can be nailed in place.
Right.
So, just to name a few, if we're talking about like savings, if you're trying to figure out what savings opportunities you have inside our money school, we actually have a pay yourself first challenge. It's a 30-day challenge for you to save as much money as you possibly can. And we guide you through the steps that you need to take. If we're talking about life insurance, just so happens that we sell life insurance. If you need term, if you need whole life, we gotcha. And again, going into retirement, we have many agents on our team that are financial advisors, and they can help you understand what your financial retirement needs are going to be and put a plan in place. And that's the reason why we actually partnered with our partners at Prevails, because we recognized that we wanted to be able to offer our clients more opportunities than just getting life insurance. Because if you think about what we looked at the beginning of this presentation, life insurance was one little blip on that
Small little
screen.
piece.
Absolutely. So there's so many other things that we can be doing. Excuse me. There's so many other things that we can be doing, and life insurance is just the first step.
Right. So back to the goals that we're trying to accomplish for ourselves. We're trying to grow and transfer wealth across generations. And in order to do that, there are some things that we have to have in place, which is a good solid foundation, which is what we're talking about here. Now, to go from these departments from the wealth planning, we need to make it simple and we need to make it look more like us, something that we can relate to. So for wealth planning, what we have is the asset classes. We have the fact that we need to understand that there's different asset classes that we need to be involved in order for us to be able to benefit from the ups and downs of the markets, regardless of what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, when the stock market is down, real estate may be up. When the real estate's down, bonds may be up. Who knows? It may be gold, silver, whatever it is. We need to be in different asset classes in order for us to ride these the waves or the roller coaster of our economy.
Absolutely.
The next thing is just taxes. When you invest money or have a business, you are taxed differently. And one thing I learned as being employed as a W-2 is at the end of the year, when we go and pay our taxes, we realize that we've paid a ton of money in taxes. When we look at our check, we're like, man, we made all this money and no, we paid it all in taxes. But the difference that I've learned is when you have a business, you pay your taxes after you paid all your expenses, which is different when it comes to working a W-2 job.
Yeah.
So the next thing is the corporations, trusts and corporations. We have our businesses inside of a trust, and we have multiple businesses so that we can benefit from the taxes of having multiple businesses. We're able to transfer funds um, uh, the way our tax planner advises us to do so that we can reduce our tax implications. I'd rather pay an individual a salary than pay taxes. I'd rather pay an individual salary to help me avoid taxes than paying taxes itself. So that's one of the things. And then we talk about management. What's the thing that we're going to use to actually fuel this whole system? Is this going to be real estate for us? Real estate is something that Carmen and we've been involved in for about 10 years now. And it's something that we're comfortable with. And one thing that we know that we need, that's what we're going to use to pay our policy premiums. That's what we're going to use to pay our loans back so that we can pass on this information to the next generation. So speaking of next generation, we have to teach this to our children. We have to teach this to our daughter so that she's able to, if something happens to us, she's able to take the death benefit and buy more insurance and then use the cash value to buy more real estate.
Mm-hmm.
We have to instill this in our children because they're not going to get it at school. And what we've learned up until this point is what we've got from our environment. So the biggest teacher of any child is going to be their parents.
Mm-hmm.
It can be intentional or unintentional, whether you intentionally try to teach them or they just see what you're doing, they're going to pick up whatever they get from you. So be intentional about what you're doing. Another thing that we want to do is be involved in our community because again, we are taught based on where we are. And if we have a hand in our community, then we can actually drive some changes that we want our families to be a part of or we want to be a part of ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Move on to the next thing. The important thing to understand is that the system that we're creating needs fuel. And it may not always be money because money is probably the easiest thing that you can get because it doesn't have emotion. It goes to wherever it's directed to. Money's created out of thin air. And the biggest thing that we have is the contracts that we're able to create, which creates money. Your insurance policy is just a contract. What we're doing with those policies is what's allowed to us through the contracts, through the cash value. We're taking that cash value and putting it and using it to generate an investment. We're using it to connect with other people and establish other relationships. We're taking these ideas and we putting them together. What we're creating is a system.
Mm-hmm.
And these systems, I'm don't want to say this to everybody. I'm sorry to say this to everybody, but we're not that deep. It's all connected. Our emotions are connected. The relationships that we establish are connected. The money that we're going to put into our system is connected. So if we have an issue at one spot, be it our emergency, be it our 6 months of saving, be it our retirement, if one of these wheels are not working, then our whole system has the ability to not work,
Yeah.
especially in the early stages.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I absolutely love this visual because I'm looking like right here at the purple wheel. Like with the financial wellness check, like we were just talking about. If you don't have those $2,000 saved, all of a sudden this wheel stops working or it falls off, and then that affects the whole
The
thing.
whole thing.
Or even if we're talking about your whole life insurance policy, let's say you stop paying your premiums, that's going to affect the whole thing. Let's say you stop paying your loans back, that's going to affect the whole system. So that's why we had to take a step back instead of just talking about whole life insurance and creating your own banking system. What are we doing before we even get to that point to ensure that our insurances are in place? So when we think about your whole system, we have to think about it from start to finish because at the end of the day, what many of you all already were talking about is what financial freedom means to you. And that might be leaving your job, that might be freedom of time, freedom of money. And when you look at this whole system, and you have to figure out what needs to happen in order to achieve that. So that's
Right.
why we wanted to take the month of February, the entire month, and have you all reevaluate your financial wellness so that you can determine what you need to do so that you can start getting to maybe that family office opportunity. Now, looking at the next point, and we're kind of wrapping up with here, is the visual of the roots creating the fruits. So when we talk about everything as far as what we need to do to move forward, let's first evaluate our roots.
Our
Okay.
stories, our negative emotions, our beliefs, our habits, our purpose, the fears that we have around money, the trauma that we have around money. We need to address all those things because those are the things that create the roots. It creates the stuff that people actually see, our relationship or our non-relationship with money.
Mm-hmm. And that's going to affect that system. Remember, we were talking about all those cogs or all those wheels. Your emotions or the roots could be a cog in that whole system because then you're going to recognize that what type of fruit that your system is bearing. Because what we have seen personally is we have had opportunities to make really great money. And there have been moments where we literally couldn't move forward because our mindset wasn't in the right place in order to understand how to even manage this money in the first place. So a lot of us always say, "Oh, I want all this money and I want to do this thing." But what are you going to do once all of that money is right in your lap? Are you ready to receive that money? Are you ready to be responsible with that money? Are you ready to be honest with maybe you don't know what to do or who to talk about it, but you need to move in the right place so that that money just doesn't start dwindling away?
Right. Because here's the thing. We're playing a rigged game. The game is rigged, and there's a ton of cheat codes that we can use in our favor. A business is a cheat code that we can use to to not pay as many taxes as we do in comparison to a W-2. Our whole life insurance policy is a tool that we can use because every time we pay our premium, we have access to more cash than we actually put into the policy. If that's not a cheat code, then what is?
Hmm.
And as we start to address some of our emotional issues and some of our mental states, we get access to more opportunities like real estate. You don't actually need money to invest in real estate. There's one thing that I've learned is the fact that the median income level is what decides whether or not people are can live in affordable housing. And with the inflation that has went up so much, that has put a lot of people into that category of affordable housing now. There's so many government grants and local incentives and nonprofits that will give you money to build real estate. But we don't know about these things because we're so busy in our own heads and preventing ourselves from moving forward because of the financial baggage that we had when we were younger.
Mm. That's not allowing us to move
That's
forward.
not allowing us to move forward.
Absolutely. So going back to the roots create the fruits, because if we want to establish these departments, we may have to address some things that are invisible first before we start bearing that fruit.
Mhm.
Thank you all so much for joining us in February's webinar. It means the world that you continue to support not only Darius and myself, but Wealth Nation and our agents and our entire team. It's been such an amazing opportunity to share the information that we know about money with you, and that you continue to give us amazing feedback so that we know how to better help you and serve your families. So thank you again for being with us today in our financial wellness check. And we hope that we left you with tangible not only assets, but steps that you can take to move forward this month and through the rest of the year, so that you can start chipping away at the things that you want to accomplish financially, knowing that you have the sound financial foundation in place so that you can maybe move to that family office that Darius and I are trying to create for ourselves.
Right. And remember, it's less about money and more about the habits that you've created and the emotions and that you have around it.
Mm-hmm.
So have a positive mind towards it. Make sure you give yourself grace. And remember that if you mess up today, there's tomorrow where you can do better.
Mm-hmm.
So don't get yourself down in the dumps about anything financial, because money does not have any emotion. The only emotion money have is the emotion we give it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. We want to make sure that you all know that we are going to be live in Washington, D.C. in April. If you want to join us, today is the last day of the early bird special. So go ahead and click on the link inside the chat so that you can join us. It's going to be a 2-day amazing event full of love, laugh, and just money conversation. So if you like what we do here live, or if you like what we do here on a webinar view on Zoom, you're going to love what we do live. So we're going to have amazing speakers, not only Darius, myself, but the Wealth Nation team, and some of our confidants are going to be joining us and helping teach you all the things that we've learned so that we can continue to pass it forward. So again, if you want to join us, go ahead and click on that link inside of our chat. And remember, Wealth Nation family, remember to own your own lifestyle.
Or someone else will.
Have an amazing evening.